Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I've been invited to talk about Dawah and my experience with Dawah, so I'm going to do that. Although I have a PowerPoint and I want to talk about some Fiqh Dawah things too and share my experience kind of through that. First of all, when you talk about Dawah and whenever you have like a Fiqh Dawah course, they'll talk about components of Dawah. And so when you're doing Dawah, you have three main components. You have the call, the caller, and the called. So that's your message is the call. That's what you're trying to convey to people. You have the caller, which is you who's giving the message. And then you have the called, and that's the person that's receiving that message. And so we want to talk about those three components today, inshallah. For the call, there's kind of three parts to that. It's what, so what are you calling to? What is your content? How, so how do you deliver that? And then why are we doing this? Why are we doing Dawah? Okay, and I think that's important to remember that. So we have our intention correct, and then it helps keep us motivated. Okay, because you can get frustrated while doing Dawah, and I'll talk about that. So what is our call? Okay, well, Allah tells us in the Quran, it was telling Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and we're included in this, and he's saying, say, this is my way, I invite to Allah with insight, ala basira. Okay, I and those who follow me, and exalted is Allah, and I'm not one of those who associate others with Him. Okay, so we're calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, and that's the first foremost thing. So when we are doing Dawah, we are calling people to Tawheed. We're calling people to the reality of God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the first thing, most important thing that we're calling to. That's the call of all the messengers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. They're all calling to Allah and in His reality of Him. Because people have beliefs about God, all different kinds. We're, as Muslims, have the reality of God. We're calling people to that reality, to that truth. Okay, we also call to Islam, and that's something that's universal. So we want to call to this idea of a universal idea of we as human beings, all human beings, having a purpose in life of submitting our will to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we also want to call to belief in Judgment Day or in the afterlife, because that instills that accountability in human beings. That's something that is missing for a lot of people. And it reminds people that we're going to return to Allah, which motivates them to consider your message. And it's a key component too. You know, usually in the Quran, when Allah talks about people disbelieving, He says they don't believe in Allah or the last day. Right? He always puts them together because those two components need to be there. And so for the how do we call people to this? Well, first you have to have knowledge, okay? You must call to what you know. And they always recommend in Dawah to say you don't know when you don't know, and don't try to guess or don't try to give your opinion, but call to what you know, what you're certain of. And this is another kind of tip or something I've learned through experience, is that knowing Islam well is enough. I know when I started doing Dawah, initially I had come to a workshop with Dr. Dirks, and then I watched Ahmed Didat debates, and so then I felt like, man, I really need to know Christianity if I'm going to talk to Christians, and I'm going to have to know Hinduism if I'm going to talk to Hindus, I'm going to have to know Buddhism if I'm going to talk to Buddhists. And so I was thinking I have to know all about these other religions to be able to do Dawah. And so I can, go in there and pick at their things and show the fallacies and show them how Islam is the right way. But actually, you just have to know Islam really well. That's all you need to know to do Dawah. Also, when you're doing Dawah, you have to be able to listen well to the people you're talking to. You gotta have to diagnose the situation you're in. Okay? Because people will ask you questions, and you have to really listen to those questions. Because sometimes there's a deeper something behind that question. So they might ask you about women wearing hijab, and on the surface it's just a simple question. Okay, why do women wear hijab? But really something deeper is there. They think maybe that we're oppressing women. And so when you're going about answering that question, you have to get at that deeper part of their question. So you have to listen really and diagnose what's really going on. You have to have clarity when you convey Islam to other people. You have to communicate clearly. Okay, and Surah Yasin, Allah tells us, well, those messengers there in Surah Yasin, they're telling them we're not responsible except for clear notification, balagh mubin, right? You just have to clearly convey the message. It's not our responsibility to convert anyone. Okay, because we don't guide people, Allah does that. But we communicate clearly the message so that they can receive it and then, make that conscious choice to accept Islam or not. And if you miscommunicate that, you're not clear, then you might be hindering someone from becoming Muslim. I will do that. You have to connect to people, and so we want to connect to those that are called. So in a way, we have to meet them where they are. So you kind of have to understand your audience or whoever you're talking to. You got to understand where they're coming from. You got to understand their background. You got to understand what they already know about Islam. Somebody will come into the office and they want to ask about Islam, and that's all they tell you before you get in there. Well, when you get in there to talk to them, you've got to kind of probe a little bit and find out how much they already know, where they're at, kind of on their knowledge of Islam. If all they've seen is Fox News about Islam, that's a whole different person than someone whose best friend is a Muslim and they talk to them about Islam all the time. You're going to have to approach those people kind of with different material and present different things to them. And you have to be focused. You have to stay on message. And a really good example of that is in Surah Shu'ara and Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun. The conversation that Allah tells us about in that surah is really good about staying on focus, because Fir'aun keeps trying to divert Musa from the message. Musa's telling him who his Rabb is. He's telling him who Allah is, what's Allah like. He's describing Allah on Judgment Day and accountability. And Fir'aun keeps diverting him, saying, didn't we raise you? Didn't we take care of you? And now you're coming like this? Didn't you kill somebody here? And then, he's trying to get him off mission, off the message. And so you want to focus and stay on message. And even when you're answering questions, you have to bring it back to that thing you're calling to. Because you can get into talks about politics, which you're not supposed to. You can get into talks about cleanliness. I remember the first time I was doing a Dawah thing where I got to talk. I talked for 15 minutes about how Ibrahim and Ismail built the Kaaba and how Ismail was left there in Mecca. And this is great, but not for that audience. I was explaining this and how the Hajj was developed, and I get this really long backstory to the Hajj. That would be more for an Islamic studies class or for Muslims that are learning about their deen and wanting to get more knowledge. But I was telling that to a bunch of non-Muslims who were here visiting, okay? Because I was not focused and I wasn't staying on the message. I started talking about something I had just read about and knew about really well. And I've been at times where we're in a Dawah situation, the people are there to hear about Islam, and another person in the group is talking about how to make wudu for 10 minutes. Again, these are non-Muslims. They don't even believe in what we're doing or our practices, and so to tell them how to make wudu really in depth is not relevant for this time. So you have to stay on the message of who Allah is, what's your purpose as a human being. Yes, we have accountability. Focus on those three things. So bring the questions back to those things. So even if somebody asks you about something that you would think, oh, this has nothing to do with those three things, you can actually tie it back to them. So somebody, let's say they ask you about, they might ask you about, what do you do in Ramadan? Okay, and so this can become a really long topic. You explain the fasting process and Taraweeh and all these things. You want to talk about the fasting, you do answer their question, but you tie it back to, because we believe in Allah and because we're submitting our life to Allah, fasting is practice for us to develop that taqwa, that willpower, to live a life devoted to Allah. So you turn it back to your focus, to your message there. You also want to be gentle when you talk to people. You can't be harsh. Even Musa alayhi salam was commanded to be, talk to Fir'aun in a gentle way, right? And in Surah Taha, it's translated as it says, speak to him with gentle speech, that perhaps he may be reminded or fear Allah. So even Musa was told to talk to Fir'aun, this horrible, evil tyrant, in a gentle way. So how about us when we're talking to a coworker or a colleague or a visitor to the mosque? You have to be gentle. You have to be prepared. Of course, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. If you're not prepared before you go into that setting, you're not going to do very well. You want to be familiar to your audience, yet distinct. And this is talking about when I'm talking to them, I need to talk about things in a way they can relate to, a way they can understand. And at the same time, I need to make Islam stand out because it is something unique. It has to stand out as different than other religions, or they're just going to be like, oh, that's nice, he's like us, or it's the same as us. And you want them to be able to relate to it, but you also have to make Islam distinct from whatever anybody else is practicing. Okay? You have to intrigue them, you have to make something interesting in there that's different than what they're already doing. And and I've been in situations where you have a speaker talking about Dawah and they're telling how much we're just like the Christians or how much we're just like the Jews. So then they're thinking, well, great, you should become a Christian. You might as well. You're almost the same thing, And so you don't want to leave that kind of an impression. You want to be distinct. Show them the uniqueness, the beauty of Islam. And we also want to warn and give good news. And so you don't want to leave people comfortable with their kufr. Okay, so they don't want to come and they hear you talk about Islam and then they go home and say, well, I'll see you in Jannah, all right. You can't leave them thinking like, I don't need to reevaluate, what I'm doing. And you want them to at least start to consider, is what I'm doing valid? Should I consider Islam? You want to try to intrigue them again. And if you're too much the same, or we're all good, everything's fine, kumbaya, everybody's equal and the same, and then you're not going to have an impact. You're not conveying the message really. Because all the messengers, they were warning their people. They were saying, even then they say it in a gentle, in a concerned way. They say, I care about all my people. I'm worried about you. Because if you continue on this path, ignoring Allah, disbelieving in Him, there might be a punishment for you. So they're letting them know that they have concern. There's a warning there. Okay? And there's a glad tidings too. And you want to tell them, if you do take that commitment of submitting yourself to Allah, what's the benefit of that? It will make your life better. It will give you success in the afterlife. Inshallah, you'll be forgiven, put in Jannah, and you want to convey that good news too. And like Surah Saba, it's translated as and says, and we have not sent you except comprehensively to mankind as a bringer of good tidings and a warner. But most people do not know. Okay? So this is for the messengers. They were bringing good news and they're bringing a warning when they're calling the people. We want to use reason. Islam makes sense. Okay? The beliefs especially, they make so much sense. You just have to convey this to people. Okay? You want to reach their reason, their logic, their mind. Okay? Also, you want to connect with them on an emotional level. Okay? When you talk about Islam, you're giving them, this is the meaning of life. This is your purpose in life here. There's an afterlife, so there's an element of fear because you remind people, we are going to die someday. Right? There's some accountability, so you kind of reach their heart through their emotional. So you reach their head, you reach their heart, and this is how you connect to people. And Islam stands out from all the rest, and you have to make sure you convey this. Islam is unique. When you have the truth, it's going to be unique from falsehood or corrupted versions of the truth. The actual truth, the reality, is going to be unique. It's going to stand out. You want to convey this. Also, Islam is for everybody. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is people think it's a foreign religion. It's for Arabs or, even though they're only 20% of Muslims, it's for Arabs only, or it's this, people have that concept even in this country, so you have to convey this too, that Islam is for everybody. Okay? And you want to also convey that Islam has always existed. You don't want people to think Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam started Islam. That he started the Sharia that we're following, the practice of following Islam is he's given us the updated, last, final, up-to-date Sharia for following Islam, but he's not the originator of Islam. Islam has been since Adam alayhi salam, or since the creation of creation. And so we want to convey that as well. And really that's something for me personally, to accept a religion, I had to believe it was universal. And if it had a starting point and there was a time where people didn't follow it, to me that's not universal, so I could not accept that. That's really one of the biggest things that attracted me to Islam, is I said, this has always been what human beings were supposed to be doing. That only made sense to me, that God would have something for human beings to do since he made them. And to be consistent in that. And so for me, personally, that struck me. And so, this is something we have to convey to, that universality of Islam. And you also, when people ask questions, sometimes they ask you, like, I can't remember what it's called, but you have a question that has a false premise to it. Okay, so the question itself is wrong to ask. So they'll say, don't you Muslims, abuse women. Like actually, why do you Muslims abuse women? Okay, we don't. You have to establish that. You don't try to just say, oh well, some Muslims do, and this. You have to first say, in general, Islam does not teach us. Islam teaches us to honor women and protect women, and we are not allowed to abuse women. First, you have to correct their question. Then you say, now, you could go in and say, okay, there might be some people who do that, just like there's people in other religions that abuse women. Those are wrong for doing that, and so they'll have the question is wrong in the beginning. Like, why do you do this? We don't do this. You have to clarify. This is not something we do. It's wrong. If Muslims do it, it's wrong. If Christians do it, it's wrong all around, Like they say, why are you all terrorists? We're not all terrorists, and we don't think terrorism is okay. And so you have to correct their question sometimes, and that's key. If you let a question go, you're almost accepting that premise is right. If they say, why do you abuse women? Well, you start explaining. Well, it's gonna leave them with a bad impression of Islam. So you have to correct those incorrect questions. So why do we call people to Islam? Why do we do dawah? Okay, and we have many ayat in the Quran telling us to call people to Islam. And I can read you the translations here. It says, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction, and argue with them in a way that is best. Indeed, your Lord is most knowing of who has strayed from his way, and he is most knowing of who is rightly guided. So it's Nahl. And he says, and never let them avert you from the verses of Allah after they have been revealed to you. And invite people to your Lord, and never be of those who associate others with Allah. Sort of the qasas. And another one we had before, say, this is my way, I invite to Allah with insight, I and those who follow me. So we follow the messenger, we are inviting people to Islam as well, inviting them to Allah. And exalted is Allah, and I am not of those who associate others with him. Some sort of Yusuf. And the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, even convey from me, even if it be a single ayah. And so we always say in the Dawah programs, I'll say, everybody knows, Qul huwallahu ahad. So everybody should at least understand what that means. You can at least convey that much, that concept of God. Sort of ikhlas is a beautiful starting point. When you say, what do I tell people about Islam? Sort of ikhlas is a wonderful place to start. And so I have a quote from a website, a scholarly website, where they were talking about the obligation of dawah. It says, the scholars have clearly stated that calling people to Allah, may he be exalted, is a communal obligation, a fard kifaya, with regard to the regions in which the callers live. For every region and area needs the dawah and needs people who are active in this field. So it is a communal obligation if sufficient numbers of people undertake it. The duty is waived from the others, and for the others, dawah becomes a confirmed sunnah mu'akkada, and a great righteous deed. So that's it. If you have enough people doing dawah, then it just becomes a sunnah mu'akkada for the people who are not in those groups. Okay? But if the people of a specific area or region do not undertake dawah, or not enough people undertake dawah, the burden of sin is incurred by all of them, and it becomes obligatory for all of them. Each person must undertake to call people to Islam according to his or her ability. And so, why do we call to Islam? Well, first, it's an obligation on us. We don't have enough people calling to Islam, especially in this country. And so, there also is a huge prevalence of ignorance about Islam, and in general, there's a huge prevalence of evil. So, it becomes obligatory for all of us to do dawah as much as we are able. And the reward for us is immense. The Prophet ﷺ said that the reward for if you get someone to call to Islam because of your dawah to them, it's better than red camels. It should be like better than the best of luxuries. It's better for you than the best of this world. And it does help make the world a better place. If we have more true Muslims, the world will be a better place. And it energizes the ummah. Whenever you bring somebody new into the community, that new excited person, they reinvigorate the community, and everybody feels good. Like yesterday, we had somebody take shahada after Jummah. I could hear the little second, third graders are excited, telling their mom, telling the teacher somebody did shahada today. They're pumped up. They're more proud of their religion. So it energizes the whole ummah when we call people to Islam and they accept it. So as a caller, what qualities should you have? First, you have to have knowledge. Okay, you can't share what you don't have. So if I don't know anything about Islam, I can't convey that to anybody. So, first step is to gain more knowledge as you're doing it. And a lot of times people too well, this kind of goes with character too, but they'll say, I'm not a good enough Muslim to do dawah. Until I'm a perfect Muslim, I better not try to tell anybody else anything good to do or tell anybody else to be Muslim. But that's a false logic, because we're never going to be perfect Muslims, so we're never going to do any dawah, so we're not going to get anywhere. And one sheikh, he gave an analogy. He said, if you're, think about when you wash the dishes. If you're in there constantly washing something, don't your hands become clean too? So if you're in there constantly teaching people about Islam and calling people to Islam, it's going to make you a better Muslim as well. And I found that for myself, alhamdulillah, inshallah, that doing dawah motivated me to learn more for sure about Islam. Because I would maybe get stumped at a dawah event or something. I would be stumped. I would tell you, I would spend the whole next, that evening, I'm looking up that topic and researching it and gaining more knowledge, so that doesn't happen to me again. Partly it's a little selfish because I don't want to look bad, but at the same time, gaining that knowledge brings me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was beneficial for me. You want to have good character. You have to be a model. You have to be someone that people wouldn't mind being like you, right? So if they see you as you are the example of a Muslim to them, you have to be someone they would consider being like. For communication skills, you have to have good verbal communication skills, good written communication skills, good visual skills. Make better PowerPoints than me. You have to be able to do that. You need to have wisdom, because you have to be able to read people or read situations and use the appropriate methods in that situation. You have to be a good listener, okay? Because like I said, you have to diagnose the situation. So if you get somebody and they're talking to you, they might talk about some issue that's bothering them, but really there's something else there, and you've got to be able to be, listen really and see what's really bothering them or what's really, on their mind, where you can address it, inshallah, and clear it up and make Islam clearer for them. And you got to have some charisma. You got to be able to draw people in. You have to be trustworthy, appear trustworthy to those people, so they trust that what you're telling them is the truth. Okay, so for the people we're talking to, I heard a lecture about dawah, and I really liked the levels of interest, because these are the people you might run into, okay? So you might be giving dawah, and you might have someone who is hostile, okay? So maybe they're attacking kind of the presenter in a way. They'll ask questions in an attacking way. They're disrupting the message that you're trying to deliver. I know we were at... and sometimes you can diffuse it really well sometimes, the hostile person, if you really listen and you kind of answer the question. But I remember we were at, Heston, or we were at their church in the evening, and it was a full congregation, over 400 and some people there, and they're all listening to us, and we're teaching them about Islam, and somebody says, doesn't your religion tell you to beat women? So then we have to say, no, it does not teach us that, okay? And then they say, well, in the Quran, I heard a verse that says this and this. So this is a hostile, they're trying to disrupt your whole flow, because we're talking about Tawheed. It's very clear. We're talking about accountability. Everybody's like, yes, this makes sense to me. And then you have somebody slam the brakes on it. They say, wait, this sounds too good. They want to stop your message. So you have to be able to you might have some people like that, when you're out there giving dawah. You also have people that are indifferent, and these people are difficult sometimes too, because maybe they're there for a class, or they're there with their friend who's interested or whatever, but they don't really care about this stuff. They could care less about God and afterlife and all that, and sometimes they can disrupt your process, because they'll make jokes, or they'll kind of mock what people are getting serious here, and it's really intense, and they'll try to, it's getting too serious, let's lighten it up, let's talk about something else, and so they can disrupt your dawah too, because they're just indifferent. Not that they're hostile, but they're just like, I don't really care, I'm bored, let's make a joke, and they want to do something else. You might have some people that are neutral. This is somebody that they don't care. I mean, they're not really interested to learn about Islam, but they're open. Maybe they say, if you want to tell me, I'll listen. They'd be receptive, but they're not disruptive, and that's kind of the difference between indifferent and neutral, is that they're receptive to it, they're not disruptive to your call. You can have people that are supportive, and we see this a lot at the churches. We'll have these really nice old ladies. They're on the committee that invited us, and they're just so eager for everyone to hear about Islam. Now, they're not interested maybe in becoming a Muslim, but they're so eager for us to share our faith and to learn about our faith. They're very supportive, and they might encourage other people to listen to your message. You get people that are really interested, Okay, so they're really interested to learn. Maybe they want to research Islam. Maybe they're a pastor. They want to kind of understand, how the Muslims are and get to know them. And they might even consider becoming a Muslim. You might have somebody that they would consider it, but right now they don't know enough about it to become Muslim. And then you have somebody who's ready to become Muslim. That's there, and really they're just waiting for somebody to reassure them that it's the right choice. Okay, so you have to be able to diagnose the situation, listen to the people, and kind of find out where they are on this scale. And of course, this is a scale I pulled. It's not like a fixed set in stone scale. Everybody fits here perfectly. You're going to have people in between things and so on. But you're going to meet people of all these different levels of interest when you're talking to them. And so you got to talk to them in different ways, right? Somebody who's ready to be a Muslim, I don't need to, tell them what Islam is and who Allah is that much. I have to, really just kind of find out what's stopping them and kind of, help clarify things. I know I had somebody came in, they want to take Shahada, but they want to ask a few questions first, that kind of a thing. So you just have to reinforce. Like I had a girl came several years back, and she was almost ready to be a Muslim. She just said, I got to ask you about the Trinity, okay? What's up with the Trinity? And so I said, well, don't you think if that was true, then Moses would have known about it and taught about it, Abraham would have known about it and taught about it, David would have known about it and taught about it, because she was familiar with the Bible. She said, yeah, you're right. She said, okay, I'm ready to go. And I said, really? And then I said, further, Jesus doesn't even teach about a Trinity when you read in the scripture. And so she's like, you're right. Okay, I'm good. So they just needed a little reinforcement, and they're ready to go. And I had another one, a girl come one time, and she came, and I talked to her 2 hours maybe one time, and then the next time she comes back, she just had one question. It's because you went from interested to ready, from talking to them. And sometimes you will meet people in all these different spots. Like I might talk to somebody who's supportive, and because of our talk, they move to interested. And then later they go and meet with Sister Jerry, and they talk to her for a while, and they move from interested to ready. And then they come in, and Sheikh Alad is here, and he catches them, and he talks to them, and they become Muslim. Okay? And so you might not get it. You're not going to maybe always see your results of your work that you've done. I might have talked to that person. I don't know they talked to anybody else. I think, okay, they were nice. They liked Islam, and we had a nice conversation, and I didn't do much. But really, I helped them move along, the spectrum. So it helps you. You got to keep this in mind when you're doing dawah, so you don't get frustrated. And you got to remember Nuh alayhi salam, right? How many years is he calling people to Islam, and even he has a wife won't listen, won't accept Islam. He's got a son that won't listen, and his family won't accept Islam. So you got to remember that we don't guide, like we said. We just convey clearly. We just have to be clear in conveying the message. And also you have different settings when you do dawah. At least these are the settings I've experienced. There are other settings besides these. The first one is like an individual. So I talk with someone one-on-one. And these people usually range from the supportive level to a ready level. So like they're either, I like Islam, I like hearing about it, to they're ready to become Muslim. That's usually the range I find for the individual meetings. Sometimes you have a Muslim plus an individual. And we get this a lot, where you have a Muslim, they got a fiance, they want to get married, and they really want me to help them or somebody to help them become a Muslim, Or you might get a friend, and they say, this is my best friend, I wish they were Muslim, and I've been talking to them, will you help them, convince them or something like, it's like, well, I can't convince them necessarily, I can just make them understand Islam better, inshallah. Or you might have a parent who has a kid that's, gone astray kind of, and they want you to come and save their kid, but that's a lot of pressure. It's very stressful, I think. Personally, I find that's one of the most difficult ones to go for when somebody says, save my kid. Whew, that's heavy, and you can't promise, you can't guarantee, But I've had that. I've had somebody, and I felt pressure. Like they call me, I'm at the park with my kids, and they say, my son's in town tonight. I want him to be, he doesn't have any interest in Islam. He used to come to the mosque when he was little. We got divorced. He went away, and he's here now. We'll come talk to him right now. I need you to talk to him. And I feel pressure. Like, okay, well, I got to drop the kids and go. But you feel that. That's a heavy burden, So you get different levels. You have lots of levels. So you could have, especially like with the parent and the kid might be hostile or might be indifferent. And they want you to bring him to ready or bring him back to Islam. And so that's a big jump if you remember the scale. That's a long way to go. And you're not going to be able to do that maybe one night or one session. But you might have the fiance and the person and the fiance is ready to go. They're ready to, they just want somebody to make them feel better. We'll get church groups. They visit the masjid, and those will be mixed groups. You'll have youth groups. You have elder groups. They're usually friendly, usually supportive. They can be different levels. Sometimes you'll get somebody in the group that's kind of hostile or indifferent in the group, and they can kind of interrupt your rapport with the audience. We'll have church group in the church, and that's a little more stressful on you when you're the one by yourself and you're in their home and you're trying to tell them about Islam. And that's where you'll see a little bit more of the indifferent and the hostile people maybe than you would if they come visit us. Because sometimes one person who's trying to change the church's attitude will bring you in, to let them meet a Muslim, and so sometimes you'll get some pushback from some of their group. And that's always interesting. You get those. I've been to some Sunday mornings and a lot of elders in there, and the guy said, "I'm surprising everybody with you today. I didn't know, I get there," and he's like, "Oh, this is going to be a big surprise. They don't know you're coming, and we read a book about Islam, so we're ready for you to tell us all about it." And so I'm like, "Okay, great." So I'm trying to diagnose the situation and readjust my plans and everything, because you just get surprised sometimes. You'll get school groups, and that'll be with kids, and this is kind of touchy subject because you have other people's kids here and they're coming on a field trip, and so you really got to keep it very informational. You don't want to appear that you're trying to persuade them or anything like that. You don't want to give that, because people have misconceptions about religious people sometimes, that they're trying to do missionary work all the time and trying to get their kids, and so you really have to present it as informational when you get a group of kids, especially from a school or something. You don't want to look like you're pushing Islam on them. You'll get school groups that are colleges, and that's not as sensitive because they're adults. They're 18 or older in college usually, and so that's not, you don't have the same level of having to be so careful not to appear like I'm trying to convert anyone or anything like that. And you'll have a wide range of levels in a college class. You'll have a lot of indifference, sometimes college kids. You'll have some maybe interested, because at that age people are, thinking about life and questioning their values and what they grew up with. At that college age, they're starting to say, who am I really? And so they might be interested or even ready to be Muslim too. And then missionaries. I've had this a few times where they come to practice on me. And so they're really not interested. They're not, but they're hostile, but they don't appear hostile. So that's what's interesting is I'm acting supportive. I really want to learn about Islam. Tell me all about it. But they're really hostile and they're coming to practice on you. And that's always an interesting dynamic because you have to diagnose that, because they'll come in really supportive, and you start to see some of the questions they ask. You're like, oh, you're really not interested at all here. You have a different agenda, And so those are some of the settings I've been in. I was going to kind of walk us through, I don't know, time we're kind of running out, but for Surah Yusuf, I think if you look at ayahs maybe 36 through about 40, this is one of the best Dawah case studies you can look at in the Quran. And I highlighted some parts to kind of refer back to it. So we have the story of Yusuf alayhi salam when he's in the prison, and you have the two men are brought to him, and they want Yusuf to interpret their dream. And they talk about it. So they're talking with him, and so I'll read the translation here. It says, "And there entered the prison with him two young men. One of them said, 'Indeed, I have seen myself in a dream pressing wine.' And the other said, 'Indeed, I have seen myself carrying upon my head some bread from which the birds were eating. Inform us of its interpretation. Indeed, we see you to be of those who do good.'" And so I highlighted that part because that goes with the caller. Okay, so as someone calling to Islam, you should be somebody that stands out. You should be somebody that has character, that has charisma, that has some, you're a model for them of what a Muslim should be. So this caught their attention. They see them as somebody unique. So that's that part of being a good caller, is that you stand out. Okay. And then Yusuf said, you will not receive food that is provided to you except that I will inform you of its interpretation before it comes to you. He said, "That is from what my Lord has taught me. Indeed, I have left the religion of a people who do not believe in Allah, and they in the hereafter are disbelievers." Okay, so I highlighted these two parts. This one is talking about, like I talked about before, where people ask you a question, you want to give them the message, you still answer the question. Yusuf promised, I'm going to answer your question, but first he does the da'wah. Okay? And he uses the da'wah there. And even connects it to it. He said, I'll be able to interpret your dream because of what my Lord has given me. So even ties it back to Allah. So even answering to their question, it's tied back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we kind of, refer it back and stay on message. And then also he talks about he's talking about the uniqueness here that he's like, I'm not like everybody else. I've left the religion of people who don't believe in Allah, and then the hereafter they're disbelievers. So here again he's talking about the two keys here, that belief in Allah and that belief in the hereafter. And it goes on, he says, and I followed the religion of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it was not for us to associate anything with Allah. That is from the favor of Allah upon us and upon the people, but most of the people are not grateful. So here you get into this universality of the message. So he's saying this is the same religion before me. Yusuf is not starting a new religion here with Islam. It's been the same thing since Jacob, Ishaq, Ibrahim, and they've heard of those people, so they making that connection. It's always been the religion of Allah, this Islam here, what I'm teaching you. And he's talking about, too, that Tawheed. They don't have any shirk here, so he emphasizes that part. Okay. And he says, and my two companions are separate lords better, or Allah, the one, the prevailing. Okay, so here he gets to that reason, okay? He's getting them to use their logic, so he's reaching their mind here. Is it better to have a whole bunch of masters telling you what to do? Does that work? You have a bunch of bosses telling you different things to do? That doesn't work. It's better to have, you have one person you're serving, and you can follow them. You're not going to be confused. You're not going to be conflicted. It's going to be clear. It makes more sense. Okay. And then he talks about that you worship not besides him except mere names that you have named, you and your fathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. Legislation is not but for Allah. He has commanded that you worship none except him. That is the correct religion, but most people do not know. So here he kind of gets into the purpose of life here, especially this part. He's talking about, he's commanded that you worship none except him. So he's saying this is what all human beings are supposed to be doing. This is that universal message here. This is what Allah has commanded for all of us. Our Creator has made this for all of us. You're getting that universality there. Okay, and he also is talking about this is something where you got to look at the setting, but you can kind of dig into, is what you're believing, think about what you're believing. He's getting them to think about what they're believing. Here he's saying, it's very clear and very kind of a little bit blunt. People would say nowadays we're so sensitive, but he's saying those things that you're worshiping, they're just made up things that you've invented. So he's getting them to think about, is what I'm doing really, does it have a foundation there? And he's getting them to think about that. And that is called for in some situations where you're talking to somebody in Dawah, you have to kind of get them to think about their worldview, their belief system that they have. And really to analyze it and say, is this really... And you can do that in an indirect way too. You don't always have to be direct. Some situations it's not good to be direct. You're going to cause conflict or hostility, so you can do it in an indirect way too. So, that's all I have. Let's see if you have any questions or about all things. Yeah?
So, in the two slides before you said there are some level of audiences.
The levels of the...
One of them is that some wants to impress you.
Which one?
The next slide,
Oh.
The next one.
Oh, the different groups.
The church group in church, usually friendly, maybe expecting to impress you.
Oh, okay, yes, sorry. Yeah, that's... I've experienced it. I've been invited to churches, and the church really thought we're going to be so amazed with the church that we'll want to leave Islam and become Christian like them. I've been in a situation. Jerry was with me on one. We went to one where that was their whole reason for inviting us. Really, was that they thought they'll be so impressed with our church and the freedom and the singing and the the nice place and the nice friendly atmosphere, they'll want to become a Muslim or become a Christian. So that's another kind of something you'll run into when you're getting invited to a church, that you won't have that when they come to us usually.